A huge welcome to the author studio to my next guest, the very enchanting Sandra Brown. This lady knows a thing or two about writing. She's written over 70 novels and had over 60 New York Times bestsellers. She's smart, she's witty. I think you're going to really enjoy this.
Read, 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 and write, write, write. I think that's probably 6 tips instead of just one, but truly I don't think you can be a writer unless you're an absolutely avid reader. And I think you have to be a reader first. So it sounds so elementary, but in seminars when aspiring writers say, "What should I do?" I say, sit down in a chair and put words on paper. Because if there are any shortcuts, I don't know them, and I've been doing this for a long time. You still have to spend hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes years, all alone in solitude and putting words on paper, and that's basically it. I've written over 70 novels, so it's hard to choose just one. There are several that kind of stand out in my mind. One is called Envy, and the reason I say that is because it's been a big fan book. I still get a lot of email about envy, so that seems to resonate with readers. And then another that I wrote that was a total departure from any thriller. It was a book called Rainwater, and it was set in Central Texas during the Great Depression. And it was a very, I would say, a soft story. These 2 characters absolutely moved into my head and would not leave me alone until I had written their story. And it was a very heartfelt story for me, and it was sort of based on an incident that my dad witnessed when he was 6 years old in that setting and in that period of time. And it made such an impression on him. He wrote about it. He was an editorial writer for the newspaper. And one time I read it and I said, "Daddy, I didn't know this happened in your life." And so it's a sweeter story. So Rainwater, I get a lot of comment on because it is so different from what I typically do. It was a real departure. Well, I read all of Evelyn Anthony. I read all of Taylor Caldwell, just because Evelyn Anthony had the combination of romance and suspense that I loved, and Taylor Caldwell told such embroidered stories about people typically in moral dilemmas and a lot of family interaction. And then one of my favorite writers is Tennessee Williams. And of course he wrote plays, but he could put more emotion into so few words and really got to the heart of the matter. It was like, if you watch one of his plays or read it, the characters are really stripped bare. And I love all that Southern decadence. And so I would say those 3 writers probably had more influence on me than anything. I started out writing at home, but that didn't last long because I had young children at home, and it was a great liberating thing when both of them got into kindergarten full time, and I knew that I had the hours between 8:30 and 3:30 in which to write. But I moved out of the house and into an office early on for 2 reasons. Number one, people took me more seriously when I told them I was writing books if I actually went to work every day. And secondly, I took myself more seriously if I went to work every day. If I was at home, there was always something else to do. There was always laundry, there was always a cobweb, in the ceiling. There was always something, a good excuse for me to put down what I was doing and do a chore. And if I went to work, that's all I was doing. So I still keep an office outside my house. I now have a small staff who do everything except write the books, and it frees me to just pay attention to the manuscript. Well, I love a lot of series TV. I binge watch. I can't wait to see what the next episode is going to be. It's like reading, the end of a chapter of a book, and you've just got to turn the page to see what happens next. And I find that with a lot of series television, I can't wait until a week, and so I wait until the season's over, and then I watch them all at one time. So that is a guilty pleasure, and it's kind of an escape. But then I still read several hours every day just for entertainment, because it's still my favorite pastime. And I like my gin and tonic at the end of the day. I do. I'm big on creature comfort. I'm usually cold, and so I always have my little throw, like a granny lady, across my shoulders. I light scented candles. I kind of turn the lights down low so that my focus is strictly on that computer screen. So I do go through a little bit of a ritual every day when I settle in to write. There's a lot of business now, and I'm grateful for it. But at the same time, I resent that sometimes I have to pay attention to business instead of make-believing, which is what I really enjoy about being a fiction writer, is play like. When I was little, we would say, let's play like so-and-so, and I still do that. It never really occurred to me to be a writer, but I think the timing was so right when it happened. My mother was a romantic, and she was an avid reader, and I have 4 little sisters, and so Mother would read to my sisters and me long before we could read on our own, and she would tell stories, and she loved books. And my father was a writer, and he would do book reviews for a little extra money, a little moonlighting, and he would come home occasionally with a treasure trove of books that publishers had sent him to review. Well, it was just, I was sneaking books that I probably shouldn't have been reading long before I was old enough to, but because that was so cultivated, it was such a part of our home, books and stories. And so I got a little bit from both parents, and then when the time was right in that period of my life, when I was looking for, my creative outlet, I started, and then I couldn't stop. I loved it from day one, and I still do. I have the best job in the world. An idea will come to me, and I have no idea where the idea comes from. It can be, the lyrics of a song. It can be a snippet of conversation, and more often than not, I have no earthly idea. It's just suddenly there. I'll hear somebody talking, and I'll say, "That's interesting. What are they saying?" Or I'll envision a character, and I never feel as though I create anything. I feel as though I excavate it. I feel like the story is there. It's just up to me to find it and tell it and put it on paper. So when I get an idea, I play with it for a while, and it's sort of like a combination lock. And I keep turning, twisting, trying this, trying that, and then all of a sudden it'll click, and it's like the tumblers are all there, and it opens up, and it's like that aha moment. And that's when I know that the idea has become a story. It's when I get that thread that holds the whole thing together. It ceases to be just a series of scenes. It becomes a story. and that I get a real effervescent feeling, in my belly. It's like, oh, I think I've got it. I think I'm onto something, and that's when I actually sit down and start writing it out. I think I hate the presumption that it's easy. Anybody who says it must be so much fun, or gosh, why do you still work so hard? And to me, it's almost insulting. It's almost like I'm sitting there waiting to be inspired by the muses, and that's not the way it is. Most writers who are really successful go to work every day, and it's hard work. It's not roofing houses, but it's physical labor nevertheless. And I kind of resent anytime anyone, rather tongue-in-cheek, it's like it doesn't really count as work, does it? You're daydreaming. But that daydreaming is where books come from. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't have Shakespeare, we wouldn't have Dickens, we wouldn't have Poe, and so the daydreaming is what I get paid for. They're not paying me to type, they're paying me to make up stories. The most I've lost is about 2 chapters, and I think I fell to my knees and fell to the floor and started crying. But I've never lost more than that. I'm hyper about backing up, and because I work in an office outside the house, I have an external hard drive. It goes automatically to that, but then I take 2 flash drives with me every day when I leave the office with the last day's work on it. So I'm real conscientious about backing up everything.
I hope you've really enjoyed watching Sandra Brown and have taken something away from this interview, and that you're enjoying all the interviews you see here on the Author Studio. Keep watching, there's loads more to come.